The content you are about to watch is meant for thought and consideration. Please be respectful of each other and opinions shared. This is a safe space to express thoughts, ideas, and information. The views and opinions expressed by individuals in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of every speaker of the IMEC organization or its affiliates. P.S. The Mandela Effect is real. Our next presenter, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Eileen Colts, retired from mainstream radio networks in America and Europe, and now is from the One Eileen Colts channel, unbiased and on the fence live meditation show with Shane every Saturday night, as well as being the co-author with Shane Palopinto and Vanessa VA of Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe, which is a book that I happen to have and wish I had my copy here to hold up for you because it is absolutely incredible. She is here to present Cosmic Revelations and the Mandela Effect. Ladies and gentlemen, Eileen Colts.
Thanks for joining me today at the International Mandela Effect Conference 2020 and my talk today on Cosmic Revelations and the Mandela Effect. So a little bit about me. I'm a graduate of Loyola University, Chicago. I have a major in journalism and a minor in psychology. But I grew up in the Middle East, the West Indies, and the United States. And that introduced me to world religions at a very early age. So in my spare time, I went on to study philosophy, metaphysics, mysticism, and world religions. But I also had an interest in hard sciences. So I filled up my electives at university with astronomy, geology, anthropology, and archaeology. I even ran the astronomy lab at my local college and tutored astronomy to students who were struggling with some of the concepts. So I went on to work for National Public Radio as the morning news anchor in Chicago. Then I went to Berlin and I worked for several international radio news networks, including the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. That's how I came into contact with the Mandela Effect going back all the way to 1995. My last year at university, I was running the news desk at the Loyola University radio station, and I went to South Africa to interview Nelson Mandela while he was still in prison, awaiting release on humanitarian grounds. And they wouldn't let me have contact with him because he was too sick, so I interviewed Adrian Vlok, the Deputy Minister of Law and Order, who previously had been responsible for the country's prisons. That was in 1984 or 1985, shortly before I graduated. Fast forward just a few years to about 1987, and I was working at the National Public Radio news desk in Chicago when news of Nelson Mandela's death, tragically just weeks before his release from prison, occurred. So I went to work for international broadcasting networks in Europe and Eastern Europe. And by the mid-1990s, I was living in England. And in 1995, around that time, I saw Nelson Mandela appear with the Spice Girls at an event in London. So you can imagine how shocked I was after having covered his death in around 1987 and having gone out to interview him and cover the story of his life in around 1984-85. But I still didn't have a name for it, so I just kind of thought it was extremely bad memory. And you just forget those things and move on with your life. What's interesting is my mother was Mandela affected since the 1970s. Sometimes in the 60s as well. She would often say to me that somebody was having their second funeral, that they'd somehow sprung back to life just to die again and have another funeral spread across the pages of the rag sheets at the supermarket, usually celebrities and movie stars, things like that. What brought me into the current Mandela Effect phenomenon was I was driving a Volkswagen and the VW logo on my steering wheel changed. I used to drive along and occasionally look at the logo on the steering wheel and think it'd be a lot easier to see the V from the W if they just put a little line or a break in it. That was in 2012 when I bought the car. And by the time I traded it in 2016, there was a clear break between the V and the W. And I thought, did I do that with my mind, with consciousness? So that's what led me into discovering the phenomenon called the Mandela Effect. And I haven't stopped researching it since. That was in 2016. Personally, I believe that consciousness collectively is changing, editing, flipping and flopping collective matter. And I think consciousness individually is controlling our individual reality bubbles of what we experience. So I don't think we really need something like CERN or quantum computing, something physical and human-made to cause the Mandela Effect. There's so much happening around us here on Earth and out there in the cosmos that could easily either be correlated with the Mandela Effect or actually be causing it. While I was researching the Mandela Effect, I kind of bumped into the theory of the grand solar minimum. This is a theorized 400-year period that our sun has reportedly already entered into with fewer solar flares and increased coronal mass ejections. These CMEs create geomagnetic storms on Earth, and these magnetic storms are known to create more frequent and stronger beautiful aurora borealis, but they also interfere with electrical communication equipment. Not only that, they also weaken the Earth's magnetosphere, which some people call the Earth's magnetic shield or the Earth's magnetic field. Now, the Earth's magnetosphere is directly related to the Schumann resonance. And when the Schumann resonance, which is considered the Earth's hum at 7.83 hertz, goes into gamma wave frequency, these are spikes above 37 hertz, what kind of an effect can that have on the human brain, which also operates in measurable hertz frequencies? And even more important than that, once the brainwave is affected, how do these altered brainwave frequencies affect consciousness? Now, you may be more familiar with the alpha, beta, theta, and delta brainwaves, also measured in hertz. But gamma brainwaves are very, very special. They range between 38 and 100 hertz. They are the fastest of all. And according to some studies, gamma waves in the brain lead to simultaneous information processing from all the different areas within the brain. Gamma brain waves also are known to enhance the vibrancy of reality. This would be sensory perception, like sights, sounds, and smells would be more powerfully experienced. Gamma brain waves also have been attributed to people with higher IQs or advanced learning capabilities. Some popular consciousness researchers and authors like Cynthia Sue Larson, Lynn McTaggart, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, I'm sure you're familiar with all of these writers. They even suggest that gamma brain waves can modulate perception and consciousness, which results in expanded awareness. That can also result in spiritual growth and sometimes even spontaneous healings. Those who experience more gamma brainwave activity during meditation, they often report feeling more compassionate, or they kind of have this at-one-ment with all of creation. And if you look at the word atonement, it actually breaks down into at-one-ment. And these are really considered transcendental experiences where you meet God, and God is described or felt as all that is, was, or ever will be, and becomes inseparable from the person experiencing God, or source energy if you prefer, during these transcendental experiences. And that's what gamma brainwaves lead to. So for us to conclude that a scattered or thinned magnetosphere, which has been getting increasingly scattered and thinned the last 7 decades, that these can affect the Schumann resonance, which in turn can alter brainwave frequency, which in turn can change a person's perception, that doesn't take a great leap in faith. It's extremely logical to think that what's happening with the resonance of the earth will actually affect the resonance of our brain. But it's not just solar activity that affects the magnetosphere. There are increasing scientific reports that the entire solar system is traveling through occasional clouds of gamma radiation and even helium clouds. Some speculate that these energetic clouds may be emanating from a galactic sun, actually the core of the Milky Way. And some have been speculating that at the core of our galaxy is a white hole, a black hole, or a quasar. While I was researching all of this concerning the magnetosphere and the Schumann resonance and our brain waves and altered states of consciousness, I discovered some very limited information on what some are calling a photon belt. This is an increased energy in the galaxy that we may be moving through every 6,000 years and every 12,000 years. This is also indicated in the Hindu yugas of ages of rising and falling human consciousness. So just picture rubber bands of increased energy that go around and through the galaxy, and we periodically move through these rubber bands of higher energy every 6,000 years and every 12,000 years. Could the Mandela Effect be a side effect of cyclical contracting and expanding consciousness as we go in and out of these photon belts? But it does lead into the scientific area of the great year or the platonic year. It's described either way. It's the same thing. This has been defined as the period of one complete cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic approximately every 25,800 years. That's also called one complete cycle of axial precession. Now, why am I getting into this? It's because it seems to be all related. In layman's terms, it's the apparent path that the sun follows in the sky from a single position on Earth, rising on the spring equinox. And when it does so, it rises in one of the zodiac constellations for a period of 2,150 years. So in other words, we're moving now from the sun rising on the first day of spring in Pisces every first day of spring for 2,150 years into the sun rising in Aquarius, the constellation Aquarius, on the first day of spring for the next 2,150 years. It's really just an optical illusion because the sun does not rotate around the Earth, but it's what we see while standing on Earth. Does it really matter which constellation our sun appears to be rising in on the first day of spring for over 2,000 years each? Well, yeah, it can. It does matter if that also correlates with the position of our solar system in or out of a photon belt. It can be used as a galactic clock to predict the rising and falling of human consciousness based on where you are in the galaxy, and one way to determine that would be by following the great year or the platonic year based on where the sun rises in which zodiac constellation. I first heard of suspected Planet 10 or Planet X when I was a child in the 1970s, but it was considered a conspiracy theory, and that was in the good old days when Pluto was still a planet. Zecharia Sitchin popularized the mythical stories of planet Nibiru from his translations of the ancient Sumerian clay tablets, which were written in Babylon, Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, as long as 6,000 years ago. Those clay tablets postulate repeated flybys with the planet Nibiru every few thousand years. They also talk about Anunnaki, who supposedly enslaved humans thousands of years ago, and they're going to come back now on the next flyby and collect their gold. I really don't want to get into the religious myth and the alien connection. I'd rather stick to the science here today. The Nibiru cataclysm theory, where Nibiru is expected to collide with Earth on its return orbit, started sometime in the mid-90s, but had nothing to do with the writings of Zecharia Sitchin. Some even tied the Nibiru cataclysm theory to the end of the Mayan calendar and the 2012 doomsday prediction, and we're far past that now. For decades, the existence of Nibiru, Planet 10, Planet X, whatever you want to call it, was vehemently denied by the authorities. The theories were considered fringe, hoax, pseudo in every way by mainstream media and mainstream scientists. That is, until the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the California Institute of Technology published a press release on October 4th, 2017. It was called the Super Earth that came home for dinner. This is how it started out. It might be lingering bashfully on the icy outer edges of our solar system, hiding in the dark, but subtly pulling strings behind the scenes, stretching out the orbits of distant bodies, perhaps even tilting the entire solar system to one side. The press release went on to say that it is more likely now than not likely that Planet 9, 10 times the mass of the Earth and 20 times farther from the Sun than Neptune, does really exist. The most telling signs show that Planet 9, which is what they're calling it, may have tilted the planets of our solar system during the last 4.5 billion years, which would explain a long-standing mystery, and that is, why is the plane in which the planets orbit around our sun tilted about 6 degrees compared to the sun's equator? Over long periods of time, Planet 9 would make the entire solar system wobble, just like a top on a table. And another sign a large planet is lingering out there somewhere is that objects from the Kuiper Belt orbit in the opposite direction from everything else in our solar system. In other words, there's something really big out there that we can't see yet that's making them orbit around that unseen large object. They still don't know exactly where Planet 9 is. So far from the sun, it might be really difficult to detect. But they can see the other objects rotating around it, much like our moon rotates around Earth. The confusion over NASA calling this new planet Planet 9 stems from the fact that our original 9th planet, one that I particularly love, it has kind of a heart on the side of it, Pluto, was downgraded to a dwarf planet in 2006. This made room for the 10th planet, Planet X, or Nibiru, to be categorized officially as our 9th planet again, or the new 9th planet, or Planet 9-2, or son of Planet 9. You see what I mean? Calling Planet 10 Planet 9 kind of covers up the fact that so-called conspiracy theorists have been talking about this planet and writing about it for not only decades, but hundreds of years. In fact, going back all the way into ancient texts of Sumeria, Mesopotamia. I think it's important for you to research the mystical significance of the number 9, the mathematical anomalies of the number 9, look into Dante's 9 spheres, etc., just to understand why we're not allowed by the authorities to have a 10th planet. Another interesting point is that this new, previously denied planet was announced somewhat quietly, and most people missed it. You think if they had found another planet, good evidence for another planet in our solar system, they would have been shouting it from the rooftops, but they didn't. Now let's look at something else that could be tugging and pulling on our solar system and tilting it off on the plane of the Milky Way galaxy. Author and speaker Billy Carson introduced me to the studies that show we may actually be on a smaller galaxy moving through the much larger galaxy called the Milky Way. The infrared 2-micron all-star survey, led by astronomers at the University of Massachusetts, published their findings in the Astrophysical Journal. This shows how the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, which contains our solar system, is 10,000 times smaller than the Milky Way And as such, as it is passing through the Milky Way, it's being stretched and pulled in all directions. This isn't as shocking as it sounds at first because galaxies occasionally collide, forming bigger galaxies in the process. So in 2003, the University of Virginia modeled our Sagittarius dwarf galaxy to show how it fits into the much larger Milky Way galaxy at a slightly different plane of inclination. So this explains the tilting of our solar system when you look at it compared to the Milky Way galaxy. So how does this tie into the Mandela Effect, you might ask? Good question. If we are on a smaller galaxy moving through a much bigger galaxy, we could also be encountering space debris or energetic fields called dirty space that would have a tugging effect not only on our solar system, but also on our magnetosphere and on our brainwaves. When I first started researching the Mandela Effect back in 2016, I bumped into a University of Wisconsin study that showed all the planets in our solar system are getting hotter and more luminous now. This is another fact that most people don't know about because it would kind of blow the narrative of global warming due to human activity if all planets are heating up at relatively the same rate. You're in store for even more stretching, pulling, and tugging on our solar system and brainwaves if you watch an amazing documentary on YouTube called The Great Year, and that's on the Binary Research Institute channel. For me, it is by far the most logical explanation for the rash of geophysical anomalies we've been experiencing, like the magnetic pole drift, the scattered magnetic shield, the rising Schumann resonance, the heating up and increased luminosity of all planets now. Just look at Jupiter and Venus, and you can see with your own eyes how extremely bright they've become in just the last couple of years. And this new theory about nemesis, or a binary twin sun to our sun, could also explain the Mandela Effect, or expanded human consciousness. It explains how almost all stars in our galaxy and all stars in other galaxies have a binary twin, if not a triplet. These stars are orbiting around each other in elongated orbits over long periods of time. They illustrate how a binary twin to our sun, which is often called nemesis, or if you're looking at the Hopi myth, you'll be looking at the blue Kachina and the red Kachina, nemesis and Nibiru. It's a kind of a combination myth or religious belief. And according to the Great Year documentary, this binary twin sun to ours would be a brown dwarf, so we couldn't really see it as glowing with telescopes. It would be fairly dark, but you could see it based on its gravitational effect on us, the solar system, and nearby planets and debris around it, which is what NASA was using to theorize that we have a huge super Earth or Planet 9 way out there past Neptune doing the same thing. So it could be a possibility of a combination of Planet 9 and a binary twin, or it could just be the binary twin sun out there causing the same effects. So they go on to explain how this binary twin sun would be on a 26,000 year cycle around our sun. And that could cause all of these anomalies and more, including increased volcanic eruptions and earthquakes as it tugs at the Earth's surface as it comes nearer and nearer to our sun and our planet. The scientists, all very credible in this documentary, even postulate a speeding up of time that would shrink our twin sun's orbit from 26,000 years to 24,000 years as it increases in velocity when it nears our sun. Is Earth on a cyclical 24,000 year binary twin star cycle that fits in nicely with the precession of the equinoxes and the Hindu yugas of rising and falling consciousness? I think this free documentary on YouTube, The Great Year, in which many scientists around the world participated, is very important to our understanding of possible natural galactic causes of the Mandela Effect. It also goes a long way in explaining why people feel like time is speeding up now. And if you start to count the old-fashioned way you were taught in elementary school, for example, 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. In England, they were taught 1 elephant, 2 elephant, 3 elephant. Where I come from, we were taught 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Go ahead. Close your eyes, count the way you were taught to count a true second in elementary school, and do it to a stopwatch on your phone. And open your eyes after about 10 seconds, and you will see that time has in fact speeded up. And it's very difficult to count the actual seconds, to say those words fast enough to keep up with how fast those seconds are now going by. So the binary twin sun coming nearer to our sun, the yellow sun, and to Earth could explain the thinning magnetosphere, and a thinning magnetosphere also leads to a magnetic pole drift. So you've all heard of the magnetic pole flip, shift, or drift. It appears to be completely natural and tied to the interior workings of the Earth in conjunction with its rotation, and related to the magnetic field or magnetosphere and the Schumann Resonance. The magnetic North Pole naturally drifts a little north and south every year. That's called drift. But its drift is becoming faster and more erratic over recent decades. So is the scattering and the breaking up of the Earth's magnetic field and the Schumann resonance spikes also causing a magnetic pole drift? Do you think really it is entirely coincidental that the Mandela Effect is being seen by more and more people as these geological anomalies increase? The best source I could find on the magnetic pole shift was in a Freedom of Information Act released book called The Adam and Eve Story by Chan Thomas. This is a wonderful mystery for me personally because I found a highly sanitized FOIA Act released document on CIA.gov with only 56 pages of the original 232-page book released in the United States by the United States government. However, I also managed to buy a photocopy of that book on eBay for just over $100. Although the only other copy for sale on the internet was asking $1,000 for it. So it looks like the information in this book is not so top secret after all, if there are two sources of it for people to buy on the internet. And this was released through the Freedom of Information Act on CIA.gov. But back to the magnetic pole flip theory. In the Adam and Eve story, Chan Thomas proposes a cyclical magnetic pole shift cataclysm, and the evidence that he uses is in the geological record every 6,000 to 11,000 years. He's not alone in this. He credits this theory, called crust displacement theory, to highly regarded scientists, geologists, paleontologists, anatomists, and biologists going all the way back to André de Luc in 1779. So scientists have been writing about the crust displacement theory for hundreds of years. Not only because so many scientists found evidence in our geological record to support it, but also because human written history only goes back to the Sumerian cuneiform clay tablets, originally considered to be about 6,000 years old. It had the original story of Noah and the flood in the epic poem of Gilgamesh. And 6,000 years ago, there is geological evidence of a very large flood. So the theory is that geological evidence shows that between 6,000 to 11,000 years, the electromagnetic orderliness inside the Earth is disrupted. Could be because of a scattered magnetic shield. This allows the molten layer to act like free liquid, pulling the shell or the crust of the Earth around like a spinning top. Interestingly, the Adam and Eve story also describes the popular new rabbit hole, mud floods, in addition to rising and falling continents and global sporadic flooding as a part of this process of crust displacement. So is it an unseen super-Earth, or an unseen binary twin sun, or the fact that we're on a smaller galaxy moving through a much larger galaxy, really pulling and tugging on our solar system, that it could cause all of these disturbances? Maybe. It also could be any combination of them. If so, if any one of these things or combination of them is pulling and tugging on the magnetosphere, affecting the Schumann resonance, affecting the pole drift, why wouldn't that also affect the waves of human consciousness, resulting in the Mandela Effect? Also, could the increasingly scattered and thinned magnetosphere be the reason of reported chemtrailing? This is officially called stratospheric aerosol injection or solar management, reportedly used since the 60s or 70s. These are highly reflective nanoparticles of aluminum, barium, strontium, used to reflect and deflect increasing cosmic and solar radiation. All of this is reported but not proven. But if it's true, and the chemical spraying in the air wards off extinction level radiation, then chemtrails would in fact be good for us and all life on the planet. However, if it's only being used to protect our aging electrical grid for security purposes, then it could be detrimental to cellular biology. It might not be worth it. I'm not certain if chemtrail is being used, as it's been proposed by Harvard scientists to be used in the future. Any one of the cosmic changes we've been talking about today could actually warrant the use of chemtrailing. But this leads us to yet another possible cause of the Mandela Effect. The chemicals used in solar radiation management programs could possibly be responsible for the Mandela Effect. If they are already being used for decades and not merely being proposed, aerosol nanoparticles of highly reflective barium, aluminum, and strontium could interact with the human brain in unknown ways to actually affect changes in perception and consciousness. This could indicate that matter has always responded to collective consciousness, flipping and flopping in response to collective memory, but that the human mind could not see matter changing until somehow enhanced with the chemicals in chemtrails. This would explain why the Mandela Effect is such a recent phenomenon. And please remember, this is all speculation, as we've nothing authoritative to review on side effects of stratospheric aerosol injection. I hope you realize by now that I'm not supporting any one of these particular theories as the cause of the Mandela Effect. Until we know more about all of them, I think it's a good idea, though, to leave them on the table as possibilities and to keep watching out for changes and studies that relate to a binary twin sun or Planet 9 or magnetic pole drift or the grand solar minimum. The increased energy that any one of these things alone could cause in and around our planet or solar system, or in and around bodies on Earth, could easily account for changes in consciousness. Especially since, according to the quantum world, everything is in wave form, and waves are easily interfered with. So if we're truly entering the age of Aquarius, where we'll remain for the next 2,000 years plus, why wouldn't that include a new age of consciousness too, where we could actually see the energy waves of matter shift and change and flip and flop as they respond to the waves of collective consciousness? This might be a good time to bring up the elephant in the room. Is the Earth flat or round? Or is it another shape? The shape of an eyeball or a dome or a turtle? The only thing I'm certain is I do not know. I don't have an answer for that. And I don't think any of us will ever have an answer 100% definitely true until we rise up high enough to see the earth with our own eyes. Once we see it, we'll know. And for the purposes of today's information, it really doesn't matter, because it's very possible, for me, probable, that we live in a holographic, multidimensional reality matrix, where each small part contains the whole. In other words, information in light coded into matter. So for today, it really doesn't matter what shape the earth is. And hiding behind that elephant is another elephant. And that would be considering how much we truthers, who used to be called conspiracy theorists, have been lied to. Should we trust anything that NASA or mainstream scientists ever tell us again? Some people even call NASA never a straight answer. So all I can say is that we have to deal with what we have been given to work with. And let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because just because they got caught lying to us about a couple of things, or we suspect they were lying, or it's highly likely they were lying, that doesn't mean necessarily that they are lying to us about everything. So some of those scientific findings out there in the mainstream are very accurate and can help us in terms of deciphering possible causes and the mechanisms of the Mandela Effect. So is this new super Earth or binary twin sun or Sagittarius dwarf galaxy traveling through the Milky Way, or the Schumann rising and the magnetosphere thinning and becoming scattered, and the magnetic North Pole drifting further south, and a possible crust displacement? Are any of these possible causes of the Mandela Effect? Of course they could be, because they have a significant impact on the waves in the air, and the air is not a vacuum empty of energy. Some people even consider it a very light plasma that cannot really be detected with the eyes, but that connects us all, and then also connects us to life off of Earth. Kind of like a galactic internet. And the mechanism is the plasma, the energy, the information and light that is all around us all the time. I hope by now you realize I'm not supporting any one of these theories over the others, or possibly a combination of one or more of them could be responsible for causing the so-called Mandela Effect, which is really a quantum consciousness effect. The Adam and Eve story postulates rather well that there's geological evidence that there have been many advancing and retreating ice ages, and that the magnetic North Pole has been positioned all over the planet at different times. We could consider this a cyclical reset of life on Earth, where corrections to unsustainable Earth-damaging systems occur, so that negative or harmful life systems on the planet never have enough time to completely destabilize or destroy this beautiful planet we call Earth. Kind of like an Earth fail-safe mechanism. So now you can see why we don't necessarily need particle colliders, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, or even time travel to explain the Mandela Effect. With so much going on cosmologically, it seems logical that something as big as the Mandela Effect phenomenon is beyond anything humans can make with their own hands. It's instant, it's miraculous, it's unpredictable change that only a portion of humanity can see so far. Thankfully, that portion is growing daily. No doubt soon the whole species will be born seeing it as a natural process of collective consciousness acting on matter, kind of like the 100th monkey effect. And if you're unsure of that theory, look it up and check it out, because it does indicate that all species, especially when you look at like bees and ants and how they behave, all species probably have a collective mind. My hope for the future is that no matter what they tell you in religious texts or mainstream media, no one will doubt that matter responds to consciousness. Our collective thoughts and feelings and actions change our collective matrix. And why is that so important? Because it empowers us. It makes us more responsible while we're here as spirit in a physical material body. Well, guys, because we had to cover so much today in such a short period of time of changes going on out there on the macro level, the cosmos, I hope you will take it as just a starting point and do your own research on all of these topics and more. And keep your eyes on the skies and read science when it pops up to see if there's any possible correlation between that and the Mandela effect that you're experiencing.
And welcome back, everybody. What an amazing talk. So much information packed into such a little time frame, Eileen. I don't know how you do it. How are you doing, Eileen? Welcome to the Q&A, everybody. How you doing, Eileen?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I'm so energized by all of this, all the talks, all the chat, all the Q&A.
Isn't it incredible? I can't believe how amazing this absolutely has been so far. And your talk is nothing short of just that. And Cynthia, thank you again for joining us to co-moderate this discussion.
My pleasure. Yes.
And we have a first question coming up. Go ahead and get it started. We got a lot of questions, guys. You guys have thrown it out today. I love it. First question from Nicola Simpson. She was a super chat. Thank you so very much, Nicola. She says, do you see a white or violet white light above your eyes inside the top right quadrant of your head during meditation or other intuitive work with your eyes closed?
Nicola, yes, I do. Whenever I meditate, I see purple in my eyes, in both eyes. Not always white, but somebody took some photos of us at a reunion with my friends from when I was 7 years old and 14 years old. And there was a purple violet line of light above us.
We do apologize for that small technical glitch, but we are right back on track with this amazing conference. We do have a small break coming up, by the way, for dinner just after this Q&A. Guys, we have the audio working now, I believe. Eileen, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys loud and clear.
Woohoo! We are in real time. Cynthia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Perfect.
So Cynthia, tell everybody what happened. This was kind of amazing. I'm sorry it sounded so bad, but it was an amazing experience.
It was familiar to me. So that's why when we were off camera, I suggested just go out of the Zoom room, come right back in, because the things you were experiencing were way out of this world, like Twilight Zone. Am I correct?
Totally. Yeah. And I have this effect on recording studios. I write songs and I publish songs, but I can't be in the recording studio while they're mixing it. They actually ask me to leave the room because I will literally shut down the entire recording studio, which is computerized. Or if I stand too close to a cash register or a bank or a blood bank where you're getting blood drawn, I have to step like 5 feet away just to not interfere. And that started when I started meditating like 3 hours a day for 10 years. Then suddenly they had to rewire my entire house in England because it was wired in the 1940s. And then they said they had to rewire the whole street to the electrical box in the middle of the village, but only our street. Right. So it was so weird because what I was hearing was YouTube was turned off on my phone. There's no power to it. YouTube was turned off to my computer.
Right.
And I was hearing the live broadcast loud in my ear, and you guys were teeny tiny quiet underneath it.
Which was technically impossible because you had turned everything off. And we've been talking just fine prior to that.
And then you said, leave the room.
Yes.
And which means everything was off then, and come back in. And as soon as I left the room and came back in, YouTube was gone. A distant memory. All that noise in my ears stopped.
And I recommended it because this sort of thing happens to me all the time. I do client sessions. I never offer to record them because experience has taught me it doesn't matter what the technology is. It's totally irrelevant. It could be anything, whatever it is. The weirdest mess ups I've ever seen are going to happen.
And the
then
weirdest
people,
part of it
and
was
then
it
they
was
want
so
me,
loud.
Yeah, they want me to
It was so
explain it.
loud.
Like, why is this recording backwards, or why is it garbled, or why is it like missing patches, or why is it in duplicate? How is that even possible? I said, I don't know.
I'm just glad that it's working now, because that was so loud. I was like, how could YouTube be screaming in my ear while you guys are trying to talk to me? It was like I had my own radio frequency going on. I was drawing in YouTube into my headphones by myself.
Right. And when you were talking about things malfunctioning, I don't know if you realize it, but the famous physicist Wolfgang Pauli had such an effect on experimental apparatuses that other physicists begged him, do not enter our laboratory, because it was known as the Pauli effect. He would enter and all the equipment would fail as soon as he entered. And some of our viewers today might be aware of the sliders phenomenon, where you're driving in your car down the street, maybe you meditate, whatever, but you might notice as you go by the street lights, they go out. As you drive by, they go out.
I knock out all the street lights that are, I think they're gas. I think they're those environmentally friendly street lights. They're made of some kind of a gas. And if I walk my dog under one or drive under one, they just blink off. And then after I get away from it, they blink back on.
Right. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for their patience as we cover this phenomenon, because it seems highly relevant. Rather than dismiss it as a technical anomaly, I thought it was worth giving some mention to. So thank you, everyone.
It was pretty intense.
Yes.
It was like very loud. And I'm like, why is this so loud in my ear? And where is it coming from?
And I knew that was irrelevant.
Actually,
I knew, just like,
I can actually back this, because I hang out in a chat room a lot at the rippandrabbithole.com. And it's a lounge we hang in back there. And there's a group of us that hang back there quite often. And it has been noticed more than once that when the conversation gets emotional or gets very heated, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just get, intense, I would say. When the conversation gets intense, the electronics start to fail, the cameras start to fail, audio starts to fail. We've seen this many, many, many times among the community. So this is actually quite interesting that this is brought up now. I love it.
That's good. Absolutely. That's a good point, Jerry, because I've been in there a few times with you where we just get chucked out and we can't come back in. It's like, oh, well, because the equipment just won't let us back in.
It's so crazy how that really does happen. But I have another question for you, Miss Eileen. I think we didn't quite get a good answer to this. I think we were having some difficulty, so I'll ask again. My Life DIY says, why do we crave, need, and have depleted magnesium levels when there's a big shift with the Schumann resonance?
I love that question, and I wrote that one down. I think personally, and I'm not a doctor or a nurse, I have to up my magnesium and my zinc. I need those essential minerals, and I'm guessing that it has to do with moving the toxicity of heavy metals out of our system that we're getting through water, air, possibly, chemtrails, if we're allowed to say that, stratospheric aerosol injection, who knows? But when the gamma waves come in and our brainwave frequencies are spiking with the Schumann resonance, maybe we're a little bit more susceptible to heavy matter and heavy metals. So that's a good guess. That's the best I can do. How about you guys? Do you find you need more zinc and magnesium?
Yes, I find those very helpful, especially the magnesium. Yes. Go ahead, Jerry.
I've also found, I was actually just saying, go ahead, Cynthia. I've also found in research, again, none of this is medical advice from IMEC or any of us on the panel. This is not to be considered medical advice. This is merely the opinion of us as researchers and personal people. That said, it has been found preliminarily in our research that the shifts seem to take magnesium out of the body. So for whatever reason, magnesium being one that is needed for our bodies, and everybody is a little low on magnesium, don't get me wrong, but it seems that it's been reported more often craving it at times of shifts. That has
Interesting.
been reported a lot.
Cool.
Anybody like to add to that?
No, that just sounds like I agree. I noticed it. Yeah.
And Nachikita asked a great follow-up question here. Nachikita throwing out some amazing questions today. I got to say, he was rocking them out left and right. I could barely keep up. What exactly is the Schumann resonance measuring?
Okay, great question. And I wrote down 2 from you, Notch, and that was not one of them. So Shane from Unbiased and on the Fence taught me about the Schumann resonance because he did a little video on it like a year or 2 ago, because people are showing this beautiful blue and green and white map, which shows the spikes going downwards and it ends on around 40. And he said, that's the amplitude. That's how loud the Schumann resonance is getting. It's getting loud. And then we looked and there were little graphs like a heartbeat with a red line and a green line. And those were the actual Schumann hertz. It looked like a heartbeat going up and down. So most people like the blue colorful map, which represents the amplitude, how loud it is. And I don't see many people showing the actual hertz going up. So there's a discrepancy in the research when you look online. Some people will say it's topped out over 140 hertz, which is amplitude. And others say very verifiably it's never gone much over 40 yet, which is the heartbeat one. So I'd love to hear from both of you, Jerry and Cynthia, if you have more to share on the 2 different ways to measure it.
Well, Jerry's got quite a lot. He has been looking into this. So I want to hear from you, Jerry, because you've been the one noticing some amazing correlations.
So it was pointed out to myself and a team of researchers I was working with a couple of years ago, who are still doing a great job, may I add, that the Schumann resonance has a certain pattern in a certain signature within the graph, that when this signature happens to occur, the community independently verifies that there's been a shift. And it's been multiple times we've been able to verify the signature. Really interesting there. I haven't been able to dig down deeply enough to explain to you exactly how and why, or a lot of that, but I do know that we have found that. Now, the Schumann resonance, to the best of my knowledge, is the difference between the ionosphere and the ground level, and the amount of lightning strikes and disturbance within this area, this cavity, if you will, would be what's being recorded as the Schumann resonance from a variety of detectors around the world that are all fed into one. I will find the website later. It's a hard website to remember, something like sosrff.tsu. Don't quote me. I may have messed that up a little bit. But it goes into that one detector, and the detector that we usually see, it's a Russian site. It's what most of them use for the bar graphs, things like that. That is what gives the average of the overall detections across the entire planet. That's generally how it is detected. Now, what instruments and whatnot is used? That was a question also. Forgive me, I don't have the questions right in front of me right this second. I will look up and credit who did ask this question, but they asked what equipment exactly is being used, and I think we can roll right on into this. I personally don't know exactly how they measure it as far as equipment goes. Does anybody else have any information along those lines? And I'm going to look up who asked that particular question.
I do follow the Russian site as well because I like the graphs, and I don't think it's political when you're measuring the Schumann resonance. How about you, Cynthia? Do you know about the exact equipment used to measure the Earth's hum in hertz?
I do not know which equipment their various sites are using, but one thing we might want to do, and maybe you could answer this for people who are just coming in, they don't even know, what is the Schumann frequency? What is this resonance? Okay. Could you give us an overview?
Sure, my overview of it, and then Jerry, maybe you can give us a more detailed overview of it, is I see it as the Earth's hum. It's a resonant sound that's coming from the Earth at all times. Around 7.83 is considered normal. And without this constant hum, human beings go crazy. That's what's been reported. But then you have to be careful because people don't believe NASA, and NASA says we have to keep that hum going if we put people out of the atmosphere, or they will literally emotionally lose it. So it's somehow tied to human brainwaves and human feelings and human moods. But then again, I have a lot of flat earth friends, and I just don't go there. I'm like, okay, if that part of the Schumann resonance doesn't resonate with you, I'm okay with that. Because let me just get this out right away. I believe that the matrix we're sharing, based on my personal research, is holographic, and that it is coded information in light, and that it takes consciousness to actually observe the hologram and condense it down into matter. And if you've got enough people saying the earth is flat, then we can condense that down into a flat earth experience. And if you have enough people, we're talking 100th monkey here now, and hive mind, collective consciousness saying, no, the earth is round, we can together condense that down through the observer effect to a round earth experience. So my view of the matrix is much different to actual shapes of things. And I also believe that the hologram is multidimensional. So as soon as you start adding dimensions to that picture, you get almost an infinite experience, whether you do it individually with your own individual reality bubble based on your beliefs, or if you do it collectively, like with this group here, we could create a collective experience that feels very, very true to us, while another group outside of us observes us and says, they're all crazy there because I'm not seeing what they're seeing. And there have been a lot of studies in psychology to prove that, particularly police reporting. You can have a group of people standing in the same place, and some kind of an incident or a crime occurs, and every person will describe it differently. They'll have a different experience of the same event. So that's why it doesn't bother me if the earth is flat or round. I'm okay with both. I know that sounds very open-minded, but I truly am okay with both.
Very, very good. You took all the good information, daggone it. I really don't have very much nothing to add to that as far as Schumann goes. The one thing I was going to point out is that when I'm going to go with space here, for those who don't believe it, I apologize. For those who do, thank you. When the astronauts did go to space, as the story goes, I should say, they did get sick because they needed a Schumann resonance projector on the equipment with them. And it does directly affect the human body. It directly indeed, because you will be sick and whatnot. Now, one thing I did find interesting in some research that I did is that they said the Schumann resonance got off for them and it made them sick. However, the Schumann resonance actually lined back up with the planet Mars, or
Now,
whatever
that's
that may be worth. That was some research that I did run across at the top.
Cynthia, do you have anything to add to the Schumann and brainwaves?
Oh, just that it feels good. I know that there is a definite connection with being healed by the earth to, in other words, just lie down on the ground directly and feel that very strong positive energy. Even people that don't feel energies can often sense something. And a couple of researchers that have worked with energy, like Donna Eden and others, have noticed that they've been extremely sick, but just to be in that very healing energy frequency is like miraculously healing for some people. So
I agree.
I think that's worth mentioning as well.
I do a lot of meditations with earth to heal, because our body is vibrating. The cellular structure is made of waves and particles, but it's light and coded information into matter, and the earth is vibrating and we're vibrating, and then we have our consciousness vibrating. So you got your body vibrating, you have your consciousness vibrating, you've got your heart energy vibrating. Right. And I find that when I understand it as like the heart is magnetic energy, the brain waves, synapses are electrical, and then the earth and the kinetic of speaking and moving is a different kind of energy, that when you can kind of coordinate it all in the direction of love and peace and healing, especially for all, you get a tremendous personal healing from that.
Yeah.
Especially when you direct it out towards others, it just seems to come back on you in bucket loads.
Yeah. And with the conversation about the flatlands, I describe flatland. It's a concept. There's a book, Flatland, but I talk about it in my book, Reality Shifts, when consciousness changes the physical world. Because if you were to intersect a flat plane, which is just it's like a piece of paper, like you could hold a piece of paper and imagine that everything you know is on that piece of paper. If I were to put a pen through the page, this is my pen going through the page, the people who are only confined to that flat area would notice a Mandela effect. They would notice that this diameter of this circle that's going through their page changes as it gets towards the top. It goes into sort of a weird shape, and then it gets much smaller. And that's like watching these logo changes and so forth. So I actually use that example in my book. Flatland is 2D. Most of us say that we've got a 3-dimensional reality. If you can imagine more dimensions, which is what physicists are doing, then you start getting into some really trippy topographies, and it's kind of cool. I also have to admit and give a disclosure, because someone will probably find out at some point. Cynthia, you worked on a NASA project. Yes, I did. I worked on, that was one of my first jobs in college. I was tracking solar flare data with a satellite, the ICC-3 Explorer. And so mostly all I was doing is looking at solar flare data. So, being involved in physics, I was doing an astrophysics project and summer program. And it was fascinating. I got to actually bootstrap a computer, pull the Mylar tape and start it up. Run punch card programs written in Fortran.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I know. So I'm dating myself now. But I've also been on trips with my family, flying around the world. I've seen the horizon changing. I've literally flown around the world, so these experiences bias my perspective. So I'm just pointing that out. So for me, the Flatlander is a 2-dimensional approach. And that's just one way to look at the world. I'd like to go more toward 10 dimensions myself. And that's more along the lines of what Evan was talking about with the nine waves. So I think we can see that maybe that's where we're all heading, is to go higher dimensional.
And Tesla went 23 or 24 dimensions to get his information. That's what he reported.
Right.
No, that is incredible.
Yeah.
I would like to credit the person who did ask that original question. That was Bill Knight. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
So I've got
any more questions?
Oh, I've got a great one here. Great follow-up to exactly what we're talking about here. Our buddy AJ over there asks, and he always has some really interesting ones. I've heard him ask this a couple of times. So I'm really curious your take on this. Maybe you've heard him ask it once or twice. If everything has a frequency, even love, does the Mandela effect have a frequency? And if so, where do you postulate the number be?
Wow. What a great question, AJ. Difficult and great. I'm feeling like Jerry now when I put him on the hot seat too with some really deep questions.
It gets warm, doesn't it? It really does.
So in my opinion, these are my theories, and they're as true and false as a day is long or short. I'm not married to my opinions. The next day I change them if I feel like it. Like when I find new information, I chuck out the old opinions. I feel like the Mandela effect is out of frequency. That's how I feel the Mandela effect. I feel like it could be our future selves changing our past. It could be a God experience, like all that is, was, and ever will be. Kind of like the master programmer of everything. And then our consciousness through meditation and exploration of topics that are kind of, off the beaten path, opens our minds a little bit further than human minds are used to going. So we start to see the Mandela effects. My mom was Mandela affected in the 60s and 70s. So I know we had Fermilab back then, but we didn't have CERN. So I know that it's a consciousness response to matter. So in my opinion, matter is constantly shifting in and out and in and out, like a million times a second. And then if enough consciousness observes it and focuses on it in a particular way, then it's going to have to respond and react and change. So to me, it is all frequencies in the material world. I don't know about the 11th dimension or the 9th dimension or the 4th or the 5th or the 6th, but in a 3D world, which has, like some people say, the 4th dimension is time, then I think matter can pop in and out constantly, and it can change every time it does based on the observers observing the matter. So Cynthia and Jerry, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question, meaning it's almost impossible to really answer it, but I like where it's going because it gets us thinking. And those are always the best questions. So for this one, and I love what you said, Eileen, where you were talking about, I wrote down some notes. Yeah, just talking about the God experience and our future selves. I really love those ideas. So, but I think when it comes to the frequency aspect of it, what I've noticed, thinking, going back to that dimensional riffing, in my book, Reality Shifts, I'm talking about noticing increasingly what frequencies are we aware of, what dimensional vibrational levels are we aware of at various points. I was actually paying a lot of attention to that when I wrote the book, Reality Shifts, noticing what sort of patterns, like, not that one frequency is better than another, like we're like, wow, 24, but that's like keys on a piano. Look how many keys there are in a piano, way more than 24. And so what I was noticing is that it's like chords being played. And I was noticing, I don't usually go to 24. I was more playing in like 1 through 9. So I was noticing, like, what am I playing on this very teeny tiny little keyboard here? And it was kind of cool. The patterns that were frequently coming up and seeming to be associated with some of the shifts I was observing. I personally seem to play 1, 6, 8, dimensions 1, 6, and 8, which to me correlate with dream frequencies. But I think Kalaman might, this all corresponds with Kalaman. Dr. Kalaman's theories is what I was noticing with what Evan was talking about, because I was looking at 1 through 9 also. And I do talk about it in my book, Reality Shifts. It's amazing to me that these are correlating. And anyway, but when I'm playing with those frequency ranges, I definitely did notice some strong results around 1, 6, and 8, especially. That's my personal favorite. But when you get to 9, you get instant manifestation, obviously. And I haven't finished reading Kalaman's book, just started it, love it. But I think your work is amazing, Eileen. And I love the presentation you gave. I think it was spot on in terms of just saying, like, we don't know what's going on, but there are some cool things to look at. So that would be my answer. But Jerry, your turn.
Oh boy. AJ always asks some brilliantly amazing questions. Based on the research that I've found listening to you in the last conference you spoke at, Cynthia, you spoke a lot of when you were a child and you used the love emotion in order to affect reality. So I would dare say the frequency of love would be one that I would start in the range of and probably work my way. That would be my answer to that question, because that is, wow, such a mind-boggling question. So I'm going to pull it back just a hair. Medium That Rocks asks, how might your beliefs and discoveries affect your manifest?
I was just going to say that. Related to that question, AJ, the Medium That Rocks says, how can your beliefs affect manifestation? We are on the same page here and tuned in, guys. I just think I wrote a book on it. Okay. It's a little book. It's like 111 pages of 40 days and 40 nights. And what I looked at was all the religious connotation around the number 40. And then I looked at the numerology of 4. And this is a 4 year, it's 2020. So the manifestation that occurs when you meditate and go within and then bring your outside beliefs inside seems to give them this incredible oomph. as opposed to only operating out there, out in reality, out in matter, and you can work 10 times as hard to manifest something. But I'm not of the opinion that we should only sit and meditate 24 hours a day and ask for stuff. I think the kinetic energy of connecting with Earth through action is super, super important. And then I'm thinking there's magnetic energy going on. You got the Schumann going on. You've got your heart energy going on, your brain. When you tie in and use all the energies in a coordinated effort, it makes manifestation so much easier. That's what I found. And I put it into a tiny little book called 40 Days and 40 Nights Manifestation Key. It's a way, even using psychology, they found that if you practiced a habit for 27 days, it became ingrained. And if you wanted to quit something for 27 days, it became ingrained. When you go into the 40, which is a more of an esoteric number in terms of world religion, especially the Bible, right? It turns up everywhere in the Bible. But it's also in the Quran and some of the Hindu and Vedic and Buddhist writings as well, and Chinese as well. When you do it in a consolidated way for a longer period of time, it almost is impossible for it not to manifest. So that's what I found. And I hope that answers a little bit about how our beliefs affect manifestation, because I'm like, I can manifest anything. I truly believe that. And then I go ahead and do it. Like, I just go and manifest something. It might take some time. It might take some effort. It might take action. Like, I can't just sit in my chair and manifest everything. So that's my 2 cents on that. How about you guys?
Yeah, well, in my book, Reality Shifts, I'm going to draw a picture here. I've got some pictures in my book that are showing how our beliefs are powerful. And usually it's the subconscious beliefs that can either make or break what we're trying to manifest. So we might not realize what kind of thoughts are running through our head. But if we, for example, have sort of this wave, it's like a peak, it's a mountain with just a regular peak to it. And that's your belief. And you believe that what you need it. And it's what you love and it's what you want. And it's all lined up. And you're going to get that pretty well. But if you are thinking something like, I want this, but you've got a belief I can't have it because I don't deserve it, you collapse that part of your wave function down. It's like a volcano that blew its top. And then it loses its focal power. I've got a whole section in my book, Reality Shifts, about this, that it's just, you can kind of implode things. So obviously you want to take a look at what your beliefs are. And I really focus on that a lot in my books about money and also reality shifts, both, just because it's something that a lot of people don't think about. They think if they want it, that they're all set. It's like, okay, I've got my vision board. I want it. You need to go into your heart. What do you really care about? Maybe you don't really care about what you think you want because someone told you that. What some people call programming in our Mandela Effect community, we're very aware of that. Like, is someone programmed? Hopefully not. Hopefully it's truly from their heart. And then, but when you go down to the subconscious, that's where what you need drives the whole show. So the subconscious needs, I think that's the beauty of your book, 40 Days and 40 Nights. And I'm sure that's why it's in the Bible. And so thank you for raising that point. I just love it.
Thanks.
I would say when it comes to belief and manifestation, I practice a mantra every night when I go to bed, and it has really helped me. The problem is it's not specific enough, but it's too specific. And I'll explain what I mean. One of the problems I had when I looked into the law of attraction is it says if you want, you will always want. If you wish, you will always wish. You got to be careful how you word it. And that bothered me for many, many years. How would I word that correctly? So I came up with, me and my very good friend came up with a mantra, and that is, I have more than I could ever or need. The problem is, it was not specific enough, and now I have 3 jobs. So be careful with this. Careful what you wish for, you might get it. But it's been absolutely amazing, because if you aren't, if you have a passion for something, you're not really work. My opinion. But yeah, that is one mantra that I've used. And when it comes to how does it relate to belief? Well, I believe that the universe will take what I'm saying and make it truth. That it's just as simple as that. I believe if I tell the universe that, the universe will say, okay, let's make this happen. And that's exactly what it's done.
I think we're all matrix managers here. Good. I think all humans are, but some don't know it. And our community, we know it. We know we're matrix managers, right? Read Cynthia Sue's Quantum Jumps book. I'm reading the Money book now.
It's funny you use that word because when I worked at Citibank, that's what I was doing is matrix management. I was a project manager in California. They called it that. They said, you've got no power over the folks in New York and New Jersey, but yet you're going to run that project and you're going to make sure that they report on it and they do what they're supposed to do. And it takes a special kind of person to be what they call a matrix manager because I had nothing to control anyone with. I was not their supervisor. I did not fill out their reports. I did not pay them any bonuses, nothing. All I could do is be a voice on the phone, hopefully encouraging them, engaging their own intrinsic interest in whatever it is we're supposed to be doing. And so that they don't come up with excuses and other things that are more important or that they happen to already be doing and so forth. Because Citibank was kind of crazy. It was known as Ready, Fire, Aim. Even, it was an inside joke. That was back in the 80s. I know. This is like what's happening in the kitchen at the restaurant. So, and I was in information technology. I was in the programming department working with the techie people. So the matrix management was such a powerful idea. I learned so much in those years that I was there that I was able to take that knowledge and that practical knowledge. And you're right, Eileen.
Apply it to your life.
We're doing it now. I believe that those of us here in this community right now, we are matrix managing the evolutionary shift of consciousness at this time.
That's how I see it too. I feel like when you're handling your reality bubble of house, money, love, family, etc., right? You're managing your reality bubble. And then when you step out of your reality bubble with your consciousness, suddenly you are a matrix manager. You're kind of pushing it for everybody, whatever connects all of us. And luckily in this community, there's a lot of love. There's a lot of compassion, lots of empathy. Yeah. A lot of empaths here, a lot of creative people. So at least if we're matrix managing from this side of things, it's going to be in the direction of compassion and love and cooperation and goodness for all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's been my wish since I was a small child blowing out my candles on my cake. I knew it doesn't make sense to wish something for me. It had to be the best for all concerned. And that was always my wish every birthday. Yeah. Go ahead, Jerry.
I believe it.
We're coming up on the last question of this round. And again, we do apologize if your question did not get asked this round. There were so many good ones and we have such a limited time on these Q&As. We do have a panel also at the end of the day. So these questions are being saved. Also, worry not. One last question from JoJo's, and I'll cut this loose. Again, we are right toward the end of the time, just so everybody's aware. So if the Earth, at the end of the time, first half, let me be clear, audience, for the first half. So if the Earth's magnetic axis shifts in a greater amount, will this cause a large effect in our position in the universe?
Well, I'll take that one first, and then we should all talk on that. I wrote that down, JoJo's. I caught that one. And so far, we've cleared all the questions on my page. So that's a good thing, right? What a great question. So I'm just going to answer it from my research, okay? What I found is if you guys search online, NPR, which is National Public Radio, earthquake, axis shift, you will get some articles that came up surrounding, I think, the Brazilian earthquake. And I know what happened again with Fukushima, with that earthquake, where occasionally earthquakes are big enough that the entire Earth shifts like a half a degree, less than a degree on its axis. So I'm feeling that the local effects, anomalies like earthquakes, volcanoes. Sometimes you get that weird sound reported where the earth makes a very loud sound, like a trumpeting sound across many countries or states. They're thinking that's the earth blowing off some steam and readjusting a little bit. Those can change the axial position, which is not the axial precession around the equinox in the age of Aquarius. I don't think we can get knocked off that, but it might make the sun rise and set in a slightly different position. If you look up on YouTube, the Inuits, it's a tribe in Alaska and up north of Alaska. They actually did some videos about the sun shifting and rising and setting in different places, which changed their hunting grounds. So those were the first ones I came across, JoJo's, that said the earth is definitely shifting. Now, tied to that is the magnetic North Pole drift. So you got this magnetic North Pole, which the magnetite in the rocks keep a track record of where has the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, been in the history of the earth, whether it's flat or round. And the magnetite will show you where it's been. And it drifts up and down and moves around. That's called drift. But what we're having now is a kind of shift. And now the magnetic North Pole is somewhere over Siberia. That's the last it was reported a year ago. I'm having difficulty getting updates from science on where is the magnetic North Pole now. If it was over Siberia last year, where is it now, right? And that's where crust displacement comes in with the CIA.gov document that was, the whole book was removed from public viewing until they released in 2013, like 50 pages, 53 pages, 56 pages of 232 pages, because these scientists for over 200 years have been saying that, you know what, every now and then that magnetic North Pole gets pulled down further and further and further south. And when it gets close to the equator, the earth can't handle that kind of pressure anymore. And everything shifts around and it settles somewhere new. In the geological record, that was every 6,000 and 12,000 years, which ties in with Moneybags's presentation about the yugas, the Hindu yugas of rising and falling consciousness. It ties in with the precession of the equinox and the age of Aquarius. It ties in with the binary twin sun cycle of 26,000 years, because it's divisible, you know, especially since that shortens to 24,000 years. As the two suns get closer, time speeds up. Everything is divisible by 6,000 years and 12,000 years. And that ties in with the photon belt that is proposed, you know, dirty energetic space that we're going through. So my long-winded answer, JoJo's, is that it has something to do with our place in the universe. Yes, it does. And we can use planetary shifts like an axis shift to kind of tell us where we are in the universe, as opposed to, you know, going through a certain level of energetic space called a photon belt. That might occur every 6,000 years and every 12,000 years. So suddenly what's happening on Earth becomes a clock to tell us where we are in the galaxy. The universe is taking a little bit far. I'm sorry, I wrote down universe in your question because that's so big for me and mind-blowing. I don't know how planetary shifts relate to the whole universe, but I can see a lot of tie-ins with the Mayan calendar that Cynthia's going to be talking about on Wednesday, and what Moneybags just presented, and a lot of your scientific research, Jerry. It's tied into some kind of an Earth clock and a galactic clock for sure. And I'll just leave it at that. Yeah? Does that make any sense? Did it make some sense?
Beautiful sense, Eileen. Absolutely beautiful sense. Thank you so very much. And the chat was very, very much following along, so no worries there. Cynthia, would you like to finalize these thoughts on this question?
That was such an excellent answer. I don't have much to add to it. I think there are some people. The only thing I might say is sometimes I come from a mystical perspective. And for those of us that like to converse with with earthquakes and those sorts of things, sometimes you can tune into that. It's like it's got like a consciousness of its own, and we can be empathetic with it. So, but I can't really add to what Eileen said.
like
It's
that.
fabulous.
I like being able to tune in to these earth anomalies instead of being afraid of them. Like, oh,
Yes.
earthquake coming, going, what is this earthquake telling me? You know, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like talking
And-
with things, listening to them, playing with them. So it makes it more
I
fun.
I will mention that there was the earthquake that did shake the earth to the point that it set it off by what, 0.00001 seconds or something. It was really tiny. But I do wonder how that compounds over time. Just a thought. Anyway, one last question, and this is to the IMEC in general. I'm going to go ahead and field this myself, ladies, so pardon me just one moment. The International Mandela Effect Conference, Jen's Gems asks, Eileen just mentioned nanotechnology. There's a company also called IMEC who works with nanotechnology and microchipping. IMEC related? No. When we made the IMEC name, we actually found that there was another company that had already used that very same word. However, ours stands for Mandela Effect Conference or community, or some have said fill in the sea. That's a whole nother story. But yes, we are in no way affiliated or related to this microchipping company whatsoever. Thank you for that question, though. I'm glad you brought that up in case it ever does come up again. We are IMEC International Mandela Effect Conference and have absolutely nothing to do with the IMEC microchipping company, which we did also find out about again when we went to do our copywriting for our name and things like that. So thank you again so much for that question. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an amazing first half. I cannot tell you how excited I am, or maybe you can see it. I know you guys have had a blast. I've had a blast. We're going to take a small hour break here. Go ahead and get you some lunch or dinner. For me, it's around lunchtime. Go ahead and get you something to eat, take a break, relax, spend some time with the family. But make sure you come back 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour. We will be back. I promise you that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the first half of the second day of the International Mandela Effect Conference. I am joined right now by Miss Cynthia Sue Larson and Miss Eileen Colts. On behalf of all of our sponsors, the rippinrabbithole.com, Conscious Life News, Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks, Dream Visions 7 Radio Network, as well as the Kingdom of Nye radio show. Also, all of the super chats we've got, thank you guys so very much. Nicola Simpson coming in. I think she's around $30 now, Australian. Thank you so very much. You have really thrown the money in there today. Eric Mill, we thank you so very much. I'm going to go ahead and go through the whole list of all the super chats as we began real quickly. Earth Daughter, Feminim, Melinda Iverson, and Propagate This Light. Dark Slayer 1, Victorious Macris, Esteban Herdez, Eric Mill, Nicola Simpson, and Otsko Ushida. And Lord, help me if I slaughtered that name. I sincerely apologize. After the break, we have Shane Robinson coming up in his question and answer session. I am so very excited about that. And then the panel that you guys are not going to want to miss. We have an all-star, amazing panel coming up tonight, guys. So go ahead, take your break. I'm going to go ahead and run and get me a couple bites to eat because this old wolf ain't ate all morning and he's hungry. So hungry like the wolf, Duran. There we go. There we go. I know I got some of your heads going right now with some music, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the International Mandela Effect Conference Day 2, and we will be back in 1 hour. On behalf of everybody involved, thank you so very much.